Hello, welcome to our first part of the training for admins, and we'll be looking at the authoring tool in detail.
So we'll start with the authoring tool. We'll give you a full overview of what you as a user can do with the authoring tool and how you can best build content for your community using the different widgets, different options, and we'll now take you through it step by step.
Great, so we can then start from the very first thing that you can see on the authoring tool. So as you can see, you can start from adding a section, and you can either go for blank section or choose different widgets that are available on the platform. And upon clicking on each of those, you can already preview a few templates that you can use for starters. And I think it's a recommended way to start playing with the tool, start to learning how to use it, right, Marielle?
Yeah, I think it's really great because, of course, what does text and video mean? What does text and image mean? I think it's just really good to get this sort of visual reminder of the different layouts you can choose. Of course, when you choose a layout, that is just the base. So you can really work with that. You can still change everything about it. You can change the background, the images, the text. And in the end, you might end up with a fully different layout. It's really just what is the best starting block for you, really.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you get more and more familiar with the tool, we have other options to start with, and we'll take you through that at a later stage. But indeed, it's the perfect way to start with. So with the sections.
Also, you can always refer back to your templates as well. So you see here in the main authoring tool, as Julia said, the main sections. So you can really use either the blank columns or the different, texts, buckets, flashcards for each preview. Also know that for lessons, you can always do one quiz widget as well per page. That's also good to keep in mind. But if you want it already branded to your company, you may already have preset templates. Otherwise, you can also contact our team and we can design templates for you and integrate them on the system. Or you can, of course, also do that with your own graphic team and integrate them on the system very easily.
Yeah, it's a very useful feature, that's for sure, because you don't start with pre-designed, very generic sections, templates that we have here, but then you have your own dedicated area. So you can have your private templates, but you can also share them with other colleagues and team members.
Absolutely. So shall we have a look at the authoring tool now?
Yeah, let's get into it. Great, so now we can jump to different lessons widgets that you can use for the authoring tool. So of course we can start from the very basic one, which is text. And I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here, especially that you can really combine text with all of the different widgets available. We have a few suggestions here. Of course, the basic one is text and image or text and video, also with an audio. But in the end, you can really mix the text with each of the widgets. And I think this is quite an advantage of the authoring tool. That's inbuilt in our platform, because you can really, even though you start with a chosen layout, you can still edit that very quickly and very easily.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to add is like you really start with a section, but then you can really add also individual widgets. So let's say that you say, okay, I see text and video, but I want text, audio and video, or I want text, picture and video. So you go to text and a picture, and you then just simply add your audio widget there, and you can drag and drop it, to where you want. You can also do this with your text and audio. You can then just go and add a video or a picture where you want. And this is really nice, I think, for lessons, especially if you have, for example, soundbite, but you want to add a picture banner as well. You want to add a description, or when you have a quiz and you want to add a little video and ask a question about that video or ask a question about that picture. So of course, that's really nice.
Yeah, there's plenty of possibilities how you can really mix those widgets. So this is just a base to start with, right? But later on, as you start exploring the authoring tool, you can really see the maximum capabilities of the tool itself.
It's a good way to see it. It's just the base, and at any moment when you've published it as well, you can still add more content, you can still add audio, you can really keep adding changes and really make sure that you keep evolving your course as well, maybe as new information or material comes out.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So we wanted to make the tool quickly editable with the materials you publish. And also if you decide that you're going right now, for example, for text and video, but in the end you decide that actually for this particular slide you would prefer to have an audio instead, you can very easily switch the widgets with one another and then re-upload the audio file in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you have there is really the overview. It's like your menu. And then once you've started working, you can really remember that you can either add sections underneath each other. You can also add on little widgets onto each section. So that's also good to know. And of course, you can make short slides, long slides. It's really about what you want. And it's really important to remember that you can do any type of background. You have video backgrounds, you have picture backgrounds, color backgrounds. So the idea really is that you should not feel limited in terms of what you can achieve visually.
Yeah, and I think what's worth mentioning here, as you talked about the backgrounds and many different things that you can use with the authoring tool, is the fact that we really want to make sure that the courses are also adapted to mobile.
Yeah.
So you can always upload a mobile image equivalent or some other background to really make sure that the layout is also well adapted to mobile.
And you could always refer to how does it look on the mobile view, how does it look on the desktop view, and just make sure that this is really aligned with your vision for the course.
Yeah, and it takes us directly to the preview function that you have available on the authoring tool. So you don't necessarily need to go to the front end, switch to the user view. You can directly preview the slide that you're working on in the tool. So when you click on the little eye icon in the top right corner, you can then open the preview mode and you can compare different breakpoints. So it can be either a mobile view or a tablet view or even both if you want to compare. And then you can also track live changes.
In terms of live changes, what we have coming up now is that you can actually edit it in mobile mode, you can edit it in desktop mode, you can edit it in tablet mode. So this will make it even easier for you to make sure that per format you have the right font size, you have the right image spacing, you have the right colors. So this is really again to help you make sure that in each media it looks, each size it looks the best, and that you can really optimize for both mobile and desktop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so now getting into more details about the widgets that we have available, aside from the classic ones that you can think of, we also have a few that are a bit more interesting. And we have, for example, hotspots. So it's actually just by uploading an image and then you can really pin different hotspots to highlight certain elements. For example, if you want to present a timeline or a certain elements of a product, then it's really useful, this widget, right, Mario?
Yeah, definitely. So with hotspots, it's really cool because you can have an image, you can click different parts of the image, and so you can make it into a game or to a map or to some kind of exercise. So there's a lot of creativity that can be put in there. We've seen our clients do a lot of different things with that. So you can really have fun and think about how do you want to use that. And basically with hotspots, you can just drop the little plus signs somewhere. You can even make sure they look different than plus signs, and then you can just add content there.
Yeah, as simple as that. The next one on the list is buckets, and I think this is one of your favorites widgets actually. So with buckets, you can create this kind of like little game. So the users can drag and drop the items that are popping up at the top and just choose the correct item, the correct bucket.
I love buckets, as you know, because they're so visual. So as you can see on the screen, we have really cool designs, clients that have done amazing things. You can do lots of layouts with cool pictures in the background. You can have a subtle background, but have really flashy images. You can use it to have classification games, whether it's between the seasons or collections or men's and women's or other kind of things that you want people to sort out. You can really make that a very fun exercise. And I think it's just so great because it's directly built in. So it looks very custom, but it just takes you 5 minutes to set up.
Yeah, super easy to work with. That's for sure. The next widget that it's also pretty straightforward, but also a lot of fun, is definitely flashcards. So with flashcards, you can present the content in a very visual way. Again, you can use different multimedia. So it can be text, it can be video, audio, or image, or you can even mix some of those with one another. And in this case, you can really present the content in a visual way to make sure that it's not just plain long text, but that it's, let's say, the element of interaction of flipping the cards, but also presenting it in a more visual way to, just present the concept.
Absolutely. And what I love about the flashcards is, of course, first of all, that you can make them look very visually integrated. So we have here different visual examples. You can see some of them, they're really sort of blended with the background. Sometimes they pop. I think there's a lot of nice things we can do with that. And on top, I think what's really nice is that you can use different media. So you can have really, double picture flashcards that show very visual things. You can have videos in them. You can make them portrait and landscape. So again, we really invite you not to be limited in terms of what you're going to explore in terms of visual options. Really, this tool should be working for you and not the other way around. So try to imagine what your ideal outcome would be and really try to work backwards from that, because normally you should not be too limited with what we can do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's worth mentioning here at this stage that each of the widgets that we're just talking about has its own settings. So you can really have a look at it, decide on different animations to really make the content even more dynamic. So it's not that static, but you can, for example, enable fading in, fading out for the different widgets, and also play a bit with different settings such as spacing or just basically formatting it in a nice way.
Absolutely.
Another exciting element of the authoring tool is that you can actually incorporate some documents into your learning process. So we are aware that a lot of different courses that you work on have some additional learning content, right? So you really need to get some additional information from different sources. You have some PDFs or some huge videos, and you really want them to be, let's say, prominent during the learning process. So with the authoring tool, you can actually just use either documents or document viewer widgets to really present that. And with the documents, you just have a little, let's say, area highlighted that there is a document, you can preview it, you can download it. And with the document viewer, you can actually see the whole PDF or PPT. Even if it's a website, you can really scroll through that. So it could be a very fun and interactive element to be added to your course to make it more dynamic.
And this is if you want to add it inside your course or lesson. There's, of course, always two options. So you have this option of adding a document in your lesson, but you could always play with the library as well. When I upload a document in the library, I can also add a reference that is referenced to a certain lesson or course, which means that the person will not see it in the lesson directly. They will see it in the side margin. So this, again, is just really whatever you prefer in terms of course logic, course structure. For certain lessons, you might want to really embed it directly. Sometimes it's more like supportive materials, and then you can have it in the side margin. So I think this is also nice to have these two options, and you can really choose each time which is most suitable.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it should be like a really prominent element of the lesson or if it should be like a side source material.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I think the big difference between the document viewer and, let's say, linking a document is that the document viewer really opens the document. So what that means is I'm actively viewing the document in the lesson, which means it's really very central, right? So it's really like if you don't want someone to miss it. And then the document download button is rather for if you want to attach the file and you want them to maybe keep that as like a, notes for later or something like that, but you don't necessarily want them to visually see it full screen in that moment. So again, it's just a choice.
Yeah, exactly. We really wanted to make sure that with our widgets, you have different ways of using them for your course purposes.
Absolutely.
Now moving on to the quiz widgets, we have a few fun options to choose from, and it should be pretty straightforward when you click on different sections and preview the ready-made templates. So you can see we have multiple choice, we have true, false, matching, ordering, fill in the blanks, as well as slider or scale. So a few fun quiz widgets that you can choose from. And I think what's important to mention here is that, of course, each of those widgets can be intertwined with some other widgets. So for example, as Mario mentioned a bit earlier, is that you can present the video and then put a question at the bottom of the slide to really make sure, whether the video was watched. So they could do this kind of like little activity within the lesson, because the quiz widgets can be obviously also used as activities in between the learning process, right? So they're not really graded. I think it's really worth mentioning here, but it's just like an activity in lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really the difference between saying having a quiz where you really want to look at the score and it's more like a knowledge check, whereas this is really more, let's say, a reminder of the knowledge, kind of a keeping the lesson dynamic. So it's really the difference between saying, you know, you want to know an exam score, you want to know test score, you want to really verify the level of the student. That's where you use a quiz. But when you just want to allow the student to learn through doing, so really active learning, doing exercises throughout the lesson, then they're still very much in the learning process. So they're not yet at the point where we're actually collecting the points towards certificates or badges. We're really only looking at the lesson completion. So these are very different purposes. It's like dynamic learning through doing, and then you go to the knowledge check with a quiz.
Yeah.
But of course, it's a good check for the student already to understand during the lesson what their level is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. So now moving on to the translations part, because we're aware that it's a big topic for the content creation. So our authoring tool allows you to really switch between the different languages depending on the ones that you want to showcase with your specific platform. We have quite a big range of languages to choose from. And it's very straightforward and easy to translate the content. You just need to switch to the language. So for example, let's have French. And then you hover over the text, you click on it, and you see that you can translate it. But then you can also see the original content, so you really know the reference even after it's translated. So this is the manual translation, and you can of course also switch the images, for example, or switch the videos, so they are prepared in a dedicated language. And of course, it works for all the other widgets as well. So you can translate flashcards, accordion, quiz widgets, everything can be fully translated. So that was the manual translation, but we also have automatic translation available. Depending on what kind of engine you're using, we have a few, and we have a dedicated video on this topic in detail. But when automated translation is enabled, then you can really just click on auto translate with your slide or with the whole lesson, and the content gets immediately translated.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really just to make it easy for you to publish in a lot of different languages. We also work with different partners. So of course you can use Microsoft, Google Translate, and DeepL, but we can also work with LineBridge, which is a bit more advanced and has a more personal touch. So we can really support you in every way possible. For those who don't want to go language per language, just in a way you don't want to go slide by slide perhaps for the translations, we are also now offering the bulk translation. This means that you have a drop down and you can select from your active languages. So if you don't see a language active in your system, that means we first need to go into the settings and of course activate that. But you can then select from your active languages. So if you have 10 active languages, you could say, I want to select all of them and translate in 10 languages at the same time, or only 5 of them for this specific course. So you can then really select whichever language you wish to translate into, but do multiple languages that will render at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice improvement, especially if you have a lot of languages to work with.
So as many do, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and I think it's good to mention here that we have a dedicated role for this particular activity, which is a proofreader role, but it can be also for translators. So then it really allows you to have restricted admin access to the content that you want the proofreaders to have a look at. And then you also limit the access to languages. So if you have a French proofreader, they could only see French language and proofread or translate the English content. So it's also very efficient in terms of collaborating either with different third-party agencies or if your colleagues in-house do that for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is really something where we really try to match your current translation process, and we really offer normally all the functionalities for you to apply that same process here. So then there's one more thing, which is the commenting feature, which is very nice for when you're working on slides with multiple people. So this means you're able to comment on different sections within a lesson. And it's really easy because you can really say, okay, I'm going to comment on the video, or I'm going to comment on the text bubble or on the podcast, and say, oh, please look at this, or have design change that, and you can kind of speak with your colleagues and they can also reply to you and resolve the topic as well. So this is really just a little nudge that you can use to make sure that everyone's talking about the same thing. It's very similar to other tools you may work with where you can comment on specific features. So we just felt that this is really necessary when you're in the editing mode of a lesson. And depending on your workflow, of course, this may or may not be very useful for you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you have a lot of people working on the same content, or let's imagine you have some content validators. For example, the content is really specific on a certain product, and you really want to make sure that the content is well presented, all the data is there. So the commenting feature is very nice because you don't directly change the text in the widget to not, let's say, lose any content that you already created. But you can still keep the discussion open, and then in the end, when it's approved, you can just resolve the comment and update the text or switch the image or audio file. So it's really, really interesting in terms of project management within the team while you're working on the content.
Yeah, absolutely. So just another way, and I mean, of course, you can use the commenting and you can use the project management system as well to assign a status to say this is validated or this is still in progress or this is ready for publishing. So these are just little tools you can use to drive your cost to completion and make sure that you can really have everything ready to publish.
Yeah. So that was a quick overview on the authoring tool. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us directly or to your dedicated project manager. But in the end, it's all about you really enjoying the tool, playing with it, and exploring it. So good luck, and we're looking forward to seeing how you enjoyed.
Thank you so much. We hope this was a useful video.